Hey guys, and welcome to today's video. So in this one we're going to be covering off a few of the iPhone 13 rumours that have been floating around. And the first rumour is quite an interesting one, is that the iPhone 13 will actually be a little bit thicker than the iPhone 12s at the moment. And apparently the reason for this is so they can cram just a little bit more tech inside of the iPhone, which is going to form part of the next rumours that come up. To be honest, in my opinion, it's a welcome change, and I don't mind things getting a little bit thicker. Apple have always been notoriously bad for chasing down the thinness of the devices, and it's never been particularly great when things get too thin, because it just becomes a case of form over function. So I don't mind it so long as the trade-offs are worthwhile. And one of the reasons for it, and this is the next rumour, is that the notch is going to get a little bit smaller. And for me, this is one of those that just doesn't make too much sense. Now obviously the notch getting smaller is definitely a welcome change, but to be honest, I'm at the stage now where I barely even notice the notch, and until it's gone completely, I couldn't care less what they do with that notch. Making a little bit smaller isn't necessarily going to make it go away. In fact, it might have the opposite effect, where it just takes up a smaller amount of space and it just has larger gaps on either side of it, which just becomes a bit messy. To be honest, I don't care about them shrinking it down, I just want it to go away, and when they finally get to that stage, then I'll be interested. But it's certainly worthwhile knowing, because obviously if you're somebody who absolutely hates the notch on the iPhone, and I understand it is a big beastie, then this might be of interest to you. Definitely makes sense in terms of the iPhone mini, because that notch absolutely stands out, because it's pretty much the same size as the notch on all the other different iPhones, but obviously in a much smaller screen. So the notch on the iPhone mini really stands out. So if they can make it smaller for that device, it makes a lot of sense. The next one should come as no surprise, and that's that we should be seeing LiDAR on pretty much all of the iPhones. At the moment you can get it on the iPhone Pro models, and you can get it on the 2020 iPad Pro. Now it's one of those things that, because it's not across all of the different devices, obviously there's not going to be a massive amount of incentive for developers to get on board with it, because they'll be shipping it just to a smaller market. Once it ships on all the different devices, that's when developers are going to be able to really take advantage of this platform. So it really should come as no surprise that we'll see LiDAR on all the different iPhones, because that just encourages developers to get on board with it, bring more things to the iPhone to take advantage of that LiDAR sensor, and you know what, fingers crossed we will see something really funky come from that. The next rumour on the agenda, and I think this is pretty much dead cert at this stage, is that we will finally see ProMotion on the iPhone Pro models. Now rumours were that this should have shipped with last year's iPhones, but due to constraints in terms of manufacturing and production, they just couldn't get certain parts in there on time, so it had to be pushed back. And that's one of the reasons why we see such a slim difference between the standard iPhone 12 and the iPhone 12 Pro, because originally they were banking on having ProMotion with those displays, but it just never happened. So it makes a lot of sense that we will see ProMotion on the next iPhones. It's one of those things that is shipping on pretty much all flagship handsets at the moment. They have a much faster refresh rate for their displays, and Apple are lagging behind, so I would definitely like to see this happen. It is a bit of a shame that obviously it's only going to go to the Pro models, because I would really like an iPhone mini with a ProMotion display, but alas, that's probably going to be a few years out. It would definitely give Apple something to really differentiate between the iPhone Pros and just the standard iPhones, and they kind of need that if they want to widen the gap between them and just make it worthwhile to upgrade to the Pro models. The next rumour is a bit of an interesting one, and that's that we'll see another iPhone SE this year, but it will be a larger model. So rumours seem to point that we will be seeing something like the Plus models that we used to get with previous iPhones coming out in an SE format. So for those of you who really like the larger iPhones with a larger display but want it on the budget end, then this could be the device for you. If it's anything like last year's iPhone SE, they did a really good job of cramming up-to-date hardware in a budget device, so I'm really excited to see what they do with that. Granted, in my opinion, that sort of design is well and truly out of date now, and I know it's a budget device, and it just seems a little bit ludicrous that they could potentially end up charging between $400 and $500 for a device like that, potentially more, when you could go for something like the iPhone XR or the iPhone 11. So it'll be interesting to see where that sits and if it gets any upgrades over the last year's iPhone SE. And the last one is a bit of an interesting one, and it's based more on the performance of the iPhone mini. Now apparently the iPhone mini performed a lot worse than Apple were expecting it to, and it has been absolutely blown away by all the other iPhone 12 models that are on the market. And it kind of comes as no surprise at the end of the day, because although it's the lowest priced of the iPhone 12s, it's still not a particularly budget model, and people who tend to go for that smaller form factor tend to be looking for something that's a little bit more budget friendly. Now personally, I love a small form factor handset, and I would love to have a small form factor handset that has the up-to-date features like the iPhone mini has at the moment. But because of that underperformance, there are rumours that it's going to start to slip from the handset lineup, and we might not see it this year. I hope that's not the case because I really like what Apple's done with it. And in my opinion, they just need to keep on pushing forward with it because at the moment, people can't get hands-on with it. And it's only when they get it in their hands and realise how small it is compared to the previous handsets that's when that upgrade is going to start to happen. At the moment, people don't get a chance to go into a store and actually pick it up and use it. And once that finally does happen, fingers crossed, the iPhone mini will be on the up and up again. But I guess we'll have to see. Hopefully, it gets a bit of a price reduction, so there's a bit more of a gap between the mini and just the standard model. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. But please, Apple, if you're watching this, don't kill the mini. I love it. So that's it for our iPhone rumor roundup. I am sure there will be plenty more in the future because, well, it's Apple and everything just seems to make the news and there seems to be so much coming out. It'll be an exciting year to see what sort of hardware they bring to the table and I'm really looking forward to that. So let us know in the comments, is there anything in particular you're looking forward to about the next iPhones or from Apple in general? And in the meantime, hit that subscribe button and we'll be back in the future with some more awesome content. Ta-ra and take care. Bye.